Hello everybody, hope you're having a wonderful day, and this is probably the first and only extra lesson. So I didn't feel like including it in the full flow of the lessons, but it's extra. It's just for those of you who are curious and want to know some more things. Now, so far we've talked about time signature, and we've come to counting out beats and stuff and everything like that, counting out notes, clapping them out, and everything's fine and dandy from that perspective. And the three signatures we've done, sticky three time signatures we've done is 4-4, 3-4, and 2-4. We've talked about, we've really learned to clap out notes in 4-4, 3-4, and 2-4 so far. And in this system where you have 4 in the bottom number, a quarter note is equal to 1 count, a half note is equal to 2 counts, and a whole note is equal to 4 counts, and an eighth note is equal to half a count, and a 16th note is equal to a quarter of a count. That's great. And why is this the case? Because that bottom number 4 is telling me each count corresponds to a quarter note. So that I get to know this from that bottom number. So this system, you might think, why didn't I just teach you this from the beginning? Why did they go to note values? That's because this system only works for time signatures which have 4 in the bottom. And for example, if we have a time signature such as 2-2 or 6-8 or 12-16, it completely changes this entire system. So let's see how it does that. Now 6-8, anything with 8 in the denominator really, and anything with 16 in the bottom number are compound time signatures, so I don't want to get into that. These time signatures I won't be getting into today. They're called compound time signatures, and I don't feel we don't have the tools necessary to get into them at the moment. I don't think it's apt for this lesson. What we will get into, however, is 2-2 and other things which have 2 and a denominator and maybe 1. So that being said, let's just get into it, right? So let's have a look at probably the most famous non um, simple time signature. That's 2-2. Now what does this mean? Let's break this down. 2 means that there's 2 counts per bar, and this 2 means that each count is equal to a half note, and this changes the system by which I'm going to count. So in this system where 2 in the bottom number, one count is not a quarter note, one count is a half note. You have to get that through your head, right? One count is now suddenly become a half note. Why? Because the time signature changed. So based on this one fact, just like we did with the quarter note, we can reverse engineer everything else. So just like this, a quarter note is going to be equal to half a count. A whole note is going to be equal to 2 counts. A eighth note is going to be equal to a quarter of a count. This time a 16th note is going to be equal to an eighth of a count. So hopefully you can see how this progresses, right? And that's why I never say a note does not have any number of counts associated with it by default. The time signature tells you how many counts are associated with a note. And in a 2-2 time signature, a crotchet is worth, or a quarter note is worth half a count, whereas in a 4-4 or 2-4 time signature, it's worth 1 count. Now this is quite confusing, which is why I didn't make it a main lesson. And I thought for those of you who are curious, I'll make a separate lesson to talk about this stuff. So with this in mind, let's try to count out some music in 2-2s. Let's write some music in 2-2, shall we? 2-2, right? Okay, great. So now, as we've discussed how to count out notes and everything, we've discussed all that stuff. So now what we're going to do is we are going to apply the same thing but to 2-2. And once again, the way I count 2-2 is now changed. So the minute I have eighth notes, remember eighth notes are how much? Eighth notes are a quarter of a count. So to accommodate for that, I am going to have to count in 1 E and a 2 E and so again, this is extra lesson. This might be very confusing, but point being, in a 2 2 time signature, there are 2 counts per bar. So I'm counting it like 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2, right? That's how I'm counting this. 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Except, and what's different about this and a 2 4 time signature is that instead of each count being a quarter note, each count is now a half note. So if I'm 1 2 1 2 1 2, a half note is now worth 1 count, and this is worth half a count, and all this is true. So now, since an eighth note is worth a quarter count, I have to use this system to count it. And I'm going to use this system to count this out. I'm going to clap it out, and you'll see that it is, you'll see what I mean. It's best to demonstrate because it's quite hard to put into words. Okay. So once again, by this logic, a quarter note is worth half a count. A half note is worth 1 count. A eighth note is worth 1/4 a count, and so forth, so on and so forth. So let's do this. Ready? It's going to be by the system 1e and 2e and 1e and 2e and 1e and 2e and 1e and 2e and now without me counting, that is the correct way to count in a 2 2 time signature. That's the correct way to count, with treating each half note as 1 count. Why? Because that's what's dictated by the time signature. And I know this can be tough to figure out each time, but it comes with practice and intuition. And trust me, most music you'll find has a 4 in the bottom, so it's okay. And most of the music, all the music we do in this entire thing has a 4 at the bottom. So the system that a is 1 count and a half note is 2 counts is okay. That's that's prevalent in most of music, and in all the case studies we do, that would indeed be the case. But I did want to make it clear that that's not fundamental, because it can be different for different time signatures. Let's try one more time signature. I just wanted to demonstrate that it may be different. You don't have to get into using a 2 2 time signature as of now, really. But I just want to demonstrate that it is indeed different, and this is how you count it out. Let's do one. This is exotic time signature. You won't find this in many places. Let's do a 1 1 time signature. I mean, it's completely theoretical, because you know what, you don't find this. I've never seen this in my life, but it can exist. And a 1 1 time signature means that there's 1 count per bar, and each count is worth a whole note. That means that there's 1 count per bar, and each count is worth a whole note. So 2 2 time signature you see quite often. 1 1 time signature you don't. But what that means is, now suddenly the system is now changed again. Anytime the bottom number changes, the system changes. That's what you have to get through your head. So a whole note is now suddenly 1 count. A half note is now suddenly half a count, and a quarter note is now suddenly a quarter of a count, and so on and so forth. So now let me write something in 1 1. And now the way I'm going to count this is, once again, a quarter note has suddenly become a quarter of a count. So I'm going to once again, and now I'm just going to use 1e and that's it. 1e and because there's only 1 count per bar. So I'm counting this as 1 1 1 1 1 1. Literally, that's how I'm counting it. And it's going to be, but I'm going to split it up into 4, so it's easier for me to count the quarter note. So it's going to be 1e and 1e and 1e and 1e and by that logic, it's going to be 1e and 1e and 1e and 1e and once again 1e and 1e and 1e and 1e and and as you can see, so I don't know, I know this must be confusing you quite a bit right now. Such the reason I'm not asked you to pause the video and try to do this yourself, but I did want to demonstrate in this lesson, and I want you to think about this, is that the fact that a quarter note is equal to 1 count and a half note is equal to 2 counts is only true when you have a time signature which has a 4 in the bottom. And other time signatures which don't have a 4 in the bottom, the system changes, and the way you count it, the way you look at the notes and count it, changes. So I just wanted to make sure that you knew that and you understood how it changes, why it changes. don't worry, we won't be taking too much. We won't be going too deep into 2-2 or 1-1. That you this is just a joke which I used for this video. Not a joke, but you don't find 1-1 anywhere. 2-2 you find it quite often, but we won't be going into these time signatures all that much. So focusing on 4-4, 3-4, and 2-4 is good enough, right? That's completely fine, and that's what most beginning music students do, which is once again completely fine. But I did want to make it clear that the other systems do exist, and how I wanted to show you how that worked in case you were curious, so you understand that it's not fundamental that a quart note is equal to one count. That being said, once again, it's okay if you're confused, and I made this extra lesson because you don't need to watch this. It's just a good to know, right? That being said, hope you enjoyed this. If you stayed till the end, hope you learned something valuable from it. And you'll have to excuse my dog. Seems she wants to join the lesson as well. And I will see you next class. Have a wonderful day. Bye.